Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Darkstone Dossiers with your host, Anthony Darkstone.
Greetings and welcome, and to all our friends in the SAM compares in the U.S., a late good morning and good afternoon. To all our friends in the U.K., good evening. And to other people around the globe who are with us, good night, I guess. I don't know. And maybe even good morning to those watching from Japan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've probably have seen the various posts in various places about my guest today. I could take the entire show just telling you how wonderful and great he is, but I'm going to let him do that as we go through the show. But the best way of doing that is to just run a little clip to give you a small, minuscule idea of the genius of my guest. So Joel, if you'd be kind enough, please run the clip.
When somebody crawls into your mind and suddenly tells you what you're thinking, it turns your whole world upside down.
Hi, I'm Marc. I'm going to amaze you. I'm going to read your mind. Can I stop you? Have you got 2 minutes? Okay, and what I want you to do is to write a 3-digit number, okay? But don't show me. Go and get a paperback book, any book you like. You can't actually see, there's no pinholes or anything like that.
I just pick anything.
Yeah? None of us can see. I'm going to look away.
Mentalism is basically doing magic tricks with a mental flavour.
I thought I'd start with you. Okay, very simple. I've got a little notepad. Okay. I reckon 76. 76? 76! Martine, what actually did you choose? What words?
It was enter the...
This is the 8th card. We're looking for the Queen of Hearts.
Queen, not the ace, the queen.
Show everyone. Queen!
Ladies and gentlemen, Marc Paul!
Very well.
Now, what are you going to be doing for us tonight?
Well, what I want to do is to get somebody to test me, to pick a word entirely at random out of anywhere in the top 40, and I'm going to try and tell them what that word is. Ninth word. How many lines down was it again?
The 3rd line down.
3rd line down, 9th word. This is, yeah, I got it. Saturday, the word Saturday.
Cha-ching!
He got it! Well done!
Think about the 1st digit, 2nd digit, 3rd digit. Think about the 1st word. Think about the 1st word.
Okay.
1st word, just excellent. Okay. I'm going to go with that. 1. There's a 1. Yes?
Yeah, that's right.
And another 1?
Yes.
2nd word. That's excellent. I've written something down, and it ends with 4.
Oh my God.
Is that right?
How did you do that?
And I think in all of magic, the mental effects are the strongest. They're the most powerful effects.
What's the number you're thinking of?
468.
Whoa! No!
And I think they affect an audience on a very deep level as well.
Out loud, what are the words you're thinking of?
Send him.
Oh my God! Oh my God! How did you do that?
The reaction that mind magic can have on a spectator is just mind-blowing.
That's just freaky. You're weird. Go away.
And that's why I think it's the future of magic.
Wow. In my post, I wrote that I'm blessed and honored to count amongst my very good and close friends a number of top mentalists in the world. But I also added, whenever I want to feel like a layperson, there's only one person for me. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Paul. Hey,
nice
Mark.
to see you, Anthony. How are you? Thank you for having me. I've just got a question for you, though. Who was that young guy in the video clip? I mean, you know, who was he? That's got to be from, I don't know, that's about possibly 15 years ago, something like that. So, yeah, thanks for digging that up. That used to be my old promo video.
Right.
It was snippets of different TV programs that I put together. So well done for digging it up from somewhere.
Well, thank you. Well, some of the folks here watching will know that I'm a wordsmith and I've written a lot of articles in magic magazines, etc. Like we do have some now in MUM, which is our Society of American Magicians magazine. And before we talk about your good self, Mark, I want to briefly introduce you and indeed other people watching, especially our fellow members from the Magic Circle, to Dr. Joel Batman Zazutsky again. I'm not sure, I can't remember if I did it. I was so blown away watching your clip. Did I introduce you already, Joel?
No, but I'm still here. I'm
You're still here. Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah. Glad to be here, though, folks.
Yeah. I've always described Joel as the incoming president, but he's got a better way, because last night he described himself as the almost president. And the reason he's almost the president is because he takes office at the Society of American Magicians on the 1st of July. I am beyond thrilled because I'm a huge fan. You know, that's it. I'll say it out loud publicly, and I have. Yeah, of this remarkable gentleman called Mark Paul, who we'll cut to again. Yes, let's go back to Mark. There you are, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. Nice to see you again.
No, not at all. Before we start, I want to clear something up, Mark.
Okay.
And that is, I've just said to everybody how I rate you as the best mentalist in the world, but I
in your
understand.
opinion.
No, hey, you know, yeah, of course, my opinion counts. No. Well, no, not just in my opinion. You were voted the best mind reader in LA.
That was a long time. That was a long time ago as well.
Yeah,
by some 1999. That was the World Magic Awards. Yeah, long time ago. But great still, you know.
Yeah. So see, it's not just my opinion. But I understand in your household, which consists, if I'm correct, of about a dozen different pets. Is that right?
A dozen different. Sorry.
Pets. You have different pets in your home.
Oh, yes, yes. We've recently had a bereavement. One of our pet rats died, but no, we've still got a lot of pets. Yeah, we've got dogs, we have fish, we have rats, we have hamsters, we have Siberian hamsters, we have a Rankin's dragon, mustn't forget him. So, and we had South American grey tree frog until recently as well. So yes, our house is full of pets.
Full of pets. Well, I'm referring to your household because I know you have a couple of children, etc. Because having praised you, myself and the people in LA and other awards you've got, there is one person who's actually a better mentalist than you in your house. And I understand she very frequently reads your mind.
Absolutely, of course, my wife. Yes. Don't all wives do that?
Yes, it's an innate ability. Yeah, and they never sell the instructions. Yeah, you can't buy it anywhere. Yeah. Well, you've had your own 16-episode TV series. You've been on a lot of TV, the BBC, many times. You've actually instructed people on the art of mentalism, and earlier on, we were talking about superheroes like Batman and Iron Man. And it would be remiss of me if I did not mention that you were often referred to as the real-life Professor Charles Xavier from the X-Men. What's the story behind that?
Well, that was quite interesting. I've always been a fan of, of science fiction, sci-fi. I mean, I grew up on Star Wars and of course, all of that. I've loved movies all my life. And I was really quite honored to be this. I watched the X-Men movie. And in fact, my son was quite into the X-Men at one time. And no, it was really unusual. I got a phone call via my agent, and it was via a PR company. And a PR company needed a mind reader because they were doing live events. They were sort of like pop-up events all over London of the X-Men. So this was to promote X-Men First Class. And I was lucky enough to get the position of Professor X, who of course is a mind reader. He's able to read people's thoughts. He's able to project his thoughts, and it was quite fun to be able to do that. And I had some great people around me as well, because I had a girl dressed up as Mystique, and if you know anything about X-Men, you know, she was in this sort of figure-hugging outfit, all painted blue with spines on it. I've got another guy next to me who's the Azil, I think it is, who's the one. So he's like a Red Devil character. He's got a long spiky tail. So he was there as well. It was great. We had an absolute blast doing it. It was great fun. And the most memorable one was popping up in Waterloo Station. So in the morning, as all these commuters are coming through, we've literally got this set that looks like, you know, an oak panelled room from the mansion where the X-Men live. And they've set it up in the middle of the concourse in Waterloo Station, and people are walking by, and you've got the X-Men standing there, innit? And we were inviting people in, and I was reading minds, and people were signing autographs and stuff like that. So yeah, it was great fun. It was a great PR exercise, and and it was great to be part of it, you know, from my son's perspective as well. So yeah, so I thought the real life Professor X, I thought I'll have that. That's a great line to have.
It is a great line, indeed it is. And how many people who do mind magic can actually say that? Nobody, apart from you. Seriously, you know. So wow, how cool is that? I think I just want to very quickly add for all our friends and members, etc., who joined us from the States. In case you don't know, Waterloo Station in London is a fairly important station. There are about two.
It's like Time Station in New York. It's
right.
That busy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite important. So sometimes people kind of go, "What was that?" I mean, on yesterday's show, Arian said something, and we had to say, "Oh no, the English word for it." You know, that's cool. You know, everybody has to know that. Marc, let me just kind of jump in here, because you've done a lot of work, as I said, on TV, and your corporate clients. I mean, you know, it's a long and wonderful blue chip list for different things. So let me ask you on behalf of everybody, yes, we all know what it's like to stand on a stage and do a show. We all know what it's like to do corporate shows up to a point. What's your take? What's the special secret, if I can call it that, in parenthesis, when you are doing a corporate show? How do you approach that?
Okay, that's a great question. I've always gravitated towards mentalism, even from a young age. And there are sort of two main reasons for that. One is a sort of a more practical reason, and that is, with mentalism, you don't need many props. You know, you don't need to carry a lot of stuff around with you. And I recognize from quite an early stage that, you know, if you're going to have a really practical corporate set, sometimes you just don't know the environment that you're going to be involved in. You can turn up and it could literally be, you know, a meter square in a corner. You could be in the middle of a dance floor. You really don't know what the room is going to be like. So having a set where you don't have to carry a lot of material, you know, having pretty much everything in your pocket, maybe just having a large pad of paper and a marker pen and walking out into whatever space you find yourself in was very practical. The second reason is I've always leaned towards impossibility. I think as magicians, our first goal should always be to amaze our audiences. For me, I've never been a funny patter performer. I mean, I grew up, of course, watching Paul Daniels, Wayne Dobson on television. They're great performers. They have that repartee with people. You know, Daniels would ask someone what their job was, and then there would be like 3 gags that would happen straight away after that. And I wasn't that person. I'm not sort of naturally funny. I can't tell jokes very well. So leaning towards the mentalism, which and a slightly more serious sort of angle to it, sort of suited my personality. And I knew this from when I was 16, because when I was 16, I put together a stage show which had in it, I think, Roy Johnson's Spotted Can to open. It had the Chinese sticks. It had an invisible deck, and it closed with a telephone directory test, which I got from the Ganson book. It was based on an old John Booth idea. And when I did this telephone directory test, it was the thing that everyone talked about afterwards. So basically a prediction of a number, free choice from a telephone directory. And that was the thing everyone remembered. And that stuck with me. So as I progressed through my 20s, of course, I got into close-up and so on. But I also realized I wanted to do more stand-up. And I thought, well, what's going to suit me? I remember the impact of the mentalism. I know my own personality, so I lent in that direction. And I think that's always there with me. When I stand out on stage, I want to deliver amazement. I think mentalism is a great vehicle to do that. And the practicality of having the minimum amount of props enables you to shine as a personality or as a performer. So those are the main reasons, really.
Well, they're good reasons, because you jogged my memory on something. When I did a lecture in Singapore some years ago, it's not my line. I wish it was, but it really isn't. Somebody came up to me after the lecture and said, "Oh, wow, mentalism, the grown-up form of magic." And I went, "Wow, I like that line."
That's actually that's an Annaman quote. Annaman said, yeah,
I found that out later. Yes. And speaking of Annaman, he has something to do with your website, and we'll tell you tell everybody the website in a minute. And we've also actually given you the friggin' answer. So when we're done, you've got to go look at Marc's website, and there's things on there to do with Annaman. Anyway, coming back without getting involved with my favorite topic of billets and what have you. You spoke one important word which applies, in my view, more to mind magic than it does to other forms of magic, but it applies to other forms of magic, other genres, and that is environment. And in mind magic, you do have to know quite a bit about psychology, quite a lot about behavioral sciences, quite a lot about kinesics, so that you can know. Because you're in there, you don't know these people, you've never met them before. Sometimes in a corporate event, you're 6 feet away from them, and you have to choose somebody. I, and indeed other people, Marc, would be very, very interested in what process you apply in selecting volunteers in whatever environment.
Yeah, another great question. I think I would say the real core now is experience. I mean, getting out there and performing in front of live audiences gives you a feel for people. You really genuinely have an idea whether this person is going to be difficult, right, whether this person is going to be, compliant with what you're going to ask to do. And it is a feeling. It comes from that, and it comes from experience. It comes from dealing with different types of people. But I would still say that there are some general rules that you can apply to situations. So if you are maybe a close-up magician and you're thinking about doing stage shows that need volunteers, then there are certain things you can do. And you've got to remember, mentalism is very people-based. I like to think that although our props might be little pieces of paper and maybe a few pencils, the real true props are the people that we involve in the performance. So Anthony's absolutely right. You need to get people that are going to be an interesting part of the show, that they're not going to mess up some of the procedure that you might be doing. They're going to follow along with what you need them to do and be interesting up on stage. So the first thing is golden rules. Obviously, if you've got somebody, you ask for volunteers, that first person that's standing up shouting me, you're not going to choose them. All right, they're way too forward, they're way too eager to get up there. Sometimes you'll turn up at a corporate event and the managing director might say, "Oh, you should use so and so because he's hilarious, you should get him up on stage with you." He's a definite no either. You're not going to use him either, because that type of person is that they want to be the life and soul of the party. So they might do things to try and upstage you, or to maybe throw the direction of the show. So what you're looking for is you're looking for somebody who is actively engaged in the show, somebody who looks like they're really enjoying it, and having a good time, applauding enthusiastically, but not too forward, and somebody preferably in a position where you can get them up easily. You don't want someone in an awkward, inaccessible position. Although this isn't directly answering your question, this is related to your question as well. Your choice of material, for example, your opener, is very, very important, because I always choose openers that don't involve me. And the openers that I use tell me about the audience. So how the audience receives my opener, how they applaud and react to that very first effect, that enables me to look at people and decide, oh, that group over there, they're having a good time. Maybe I can pick someone from there. That group over there, they were sort of talking in the middle of that, so I won't be using them. It's things like that. So I think experience is crucial, but also apply a lot of common sense to it, and allow yourself, try not to go straight out there and start picking people. Try to give yourself a bit of breathing space out there, so that the audience gets to know you and you get to know them, and then you'll make better choices.
Well, a very good example of that everybody can see, that illustrates visually what you've just spoken about. It's on YouTube, and it's Marc Paul on Parkinson on the BBC. And for those of you who don't know who Michael Parkinson was in England, he is the equivalent, if you like, of a kind of Johnny Carson stroke Larry King. I mean, he really, you stop anybody in the street and go, Michael Parkinson, they go, yeah, they know. Yeah. So this was an important show. And if you watch this clip, we don't have time to play it, but it's on YouTube. Just go and find it. If you watch this clip, there's the singer, Tom Jones. And there's Mark, there's an actress, whose name I can't remember, Martine something, and another actor, and they're all doing things. And there's Michael Parkinson, and there's Tom Jones, the singer. And he actually says something at a point. It's a masterclass to watch Mark's reaction to him. I'm not going to say anything. Watch it. There's this kind of really world famous singer, and these actors, and Mark and Parkinson, and he makes a remark. He's not being mean, he just says it. But how on earth you handle something like that from an audience coming at you, this is a masterclass. I urge you to watch it. Yes, we don't have time to play it, but if you can't find it, ask me and I'll give you the link. So
I'm going to watch it myself. I'm intrigued what I said now.
You're a mind magician. Why are you supposed to remember things?
I think I know what you're referring to. I think I know, but
yeah, exactly. It was live television. There's a studio audience, and this is, Tom Jones, not just somebody you picked from the audience. He's already there as a guest. And the handling of that really explains in some detail what Mark was just, it shows visually what Mark was just talking about, which brings me neatly to the other thing I wanted to chat with you about, Mark, and you mentioned it in different words, and that is mental agility, because I know you love math and you were very good at math, but mental agility, I think, is vital for anybody who does mind magic. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mentalism, you talked about Anna Mann saying, that mentalism is a, sort of pure form of magic, or an adult version of magic. And I think the other fascination with mentalism is that there are so many genuine skills in there. I mean, the obvious one is the mnemonic techniques, being able to do, to remember information. I've taught mnemonics to my kids. It is a useful life skill to have. And over the years, I mean, I've collected loads of rapid calculation stunts as well. And I love those as well, because what better way to, if you're really put on the spot, and you're a mentalist, if you're a mind reader, that's slightly different because you might be asked to read minds. But if you're framing yourself as a mentalist, someone who performs mental agility, then, doing some sort of rapid calculation, something like, for example, a magic square, that is the perfect thing to do. And you're carrying that knowledge in your head. It doesn't involve any real props. You can just grab a pen and paper from sort of anywhere and do that type of thing. Doing the memory, performance, if you've got 10 people and they just all call out an object and you can remember each object and which person called it out, and then they mix themselves up and you can still remember which object from which person, or you can call them backwards, or all of that stuff. I mean, that is really impressive to the general public. The general public loves stuff like that because it looks superhuman. It looks like the things you're watching in movies. It looks like something that, that Professor X would do, somebody who has managed to train their brain to be able to do these things. And it really doesn't come across as a trick at all. It comes across as something life enhancing. So I think as a mentalist, it's very important to study those areas, even if you're not performing them as part of your act. Having knowledge of them enables you to be able to talk to your audience from a knowledgeable perspective as well. And when you find yourself in those tricky situations where somebody asks you to read their mind and you can't for whatever reason, then you can switch the conversation to something like a memory demonstration or a lightning calculation demonstration and show, how clever the brain can be if it's trained and honed.
Well, one of the great examples of that is yourself. When I first met you, you were introduced to me afterwards, after your show, by a very dear mutual friend of ours who's an MIMC Gold Star at the Magic Circle, indeed as you are, Keith Churcher. And I remember sitting there, and lots of other eminent magicians, shall we say, in that audience, including dear Bobby Bernard. And you did a Hoy's tossed out deck. And I was watching this and I thought, wow, this is cool. And about halfway through, you added a little twist to it of your own. And it was almost audible, these eminent people, and indeed myself, going, ah! So that was exactly where we first met about 20 years ago.
I remember we used to take Bobby Bernard home in the car together sometimes, didn't we? And
we did. We did.
Lost in Kilburn trying to get him home.
No, it wasn't Kilburn. It was Wembley. Yes, we were staying with. I remember that with my son. And yes, I remember that well. Yes, and I always remember Bobby's words. We were all driving around, and great mentalist that I am, I was trying to recall which street we turned down, and you were going round about 4 times. And Bobby, in exasperation, if those of you who know Bobby will know what I mean, in exasperation, used some choice Anglo-Saxon phrases and said, "Look in the." What you call it, blank,
A to
Z, which is if you live in England, you'll know what that is. It's kind of difficult to explain.
It's a book of maps.
It's a book of maps that you can't get lost. I mean, you just cannot. So anyway, yeah, that was fun. That was memorable because you may recall my son actually won the John Hart Trophy in the competition.
Yeah, Charles, of course. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you. And that was and Bobby had some lovely words to say, which came true many years later. He did go to Vegas and he did open the show there. But the point of it was that there was all these wonderful people sitting there just in total, absolute amazement. And you have this uncanny ability, and I don't know where you get it from, if you can teach it or if you can learn it, or if you can recommend some books that people should look at, where you just read the room or take what we would call in parentheses a standard or classic effect, and then just add a little, shall we say, twist of your own. I mean, I kind of learned that in a way. You were an influence on me to take things and go, okay, well, how can I do it in a way that no one else can do it?
So I think the key there is to be well read. I mean, when I was a youngster, I read everything that I could get my hands on. I mean, as a kid, my parents used to buy me the Tarbell course in magic. I used to get 1 book for my birthday, 1 book for Christmas. So over the course, there was, I think, about 7 books then. So over the course of 3.5 years, I got the entire Tarbell course. But the beauty of spacing them out was that I read the whole volume that I got. So when I got one for my birthday, I had 6 months to read that. And then when I got one at Christmas, I had a six-month period to read that. So, you know, this was what you need to do. I think having a broad knowledge of magical principles is sort of fundamental to your creativity as a performer. I mean, it's very kind of you to say, you know, that I can take a sort of standard classic type effect and sort of add a little twist on it. And I think that the reason that comes, some people say, they ask people how they're creative, and a lot of people come up with a plot and then decide what method to apply to it. And do you know what? I've never really done that. I would say that my creativity, if that's what you want to call it, has actually come from a method-driven creativity. It's knowing all these interesting methods, these interesting principles. And to be honest, you know, as a kid, that's what excited me as a magician. It's learning the tricks, learning the methods, learning those principles. And when you've got a broad understanding of them, you start making connections. So you can read about an unrelated, you know, you might read the toss deck and you might read about a completely unrelated principle, but your mind puts the two together and it's, hold on, that makes sense. That makes sense how you would apply that to that trick. And a lot of the effects that I've come up with over the years, the plots are actually still classic plots, because I think it's actually really quite hard to invent a brand new plot. I mean, some people can do that. I mean, if you look at Darren Brown and Andy Nyman, they've created some tremendous plots.
Right.
Fundamentally, I think for myself, I'm intrigued by methods. I'm intrigued by how methods can overlap and combine. I mean, one of my favorite techniques is, and it's something I think that's very underused in the world of magic, and that is moving the method out of the timeline of the trick that you're performing. So for example, if you've got a sequence of tricks, the method for trick number 2 can be accomplished while you're doing trick number 1.
Interesting.
Things like that. So you move where the moment of the trick is happening, and I think that can be a very deceptive technique as well. So I mean, it's something, you know, to think about with your own routines. That's more about routining and stage management and things like that. But it also makes a cohesive show. It brings the show together, rather than it being performing trick 1, performing trick 2, performing trick 3. It blends the show more as well, because you can, while you're performing trick 1, there might be a bit of a lull while somebody is doing something, writing something down. So you could start doing trick number 2, or the setup for trick number 2, and that's when the method happens. So that can be very offbeat. Well, we're still in trick 1 before that trick's even happened, if you see what I mean.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
It's yeah, and it's things like that that sort of excites me now in the world of magic. It's that sort of thinking, and you know, I think it adds an extra layer of impossibility, definitely.
Well, it does, because a gentleman that many of us actually knew, and I was blessed to spend a lot of quality time with him socially as well. And he would always ask, not summarizing what you said, but it's a good way to summarize it. And, you know, with a long white beard, everyone knows who I'm talking about, would go, "What do you want your magic to be?" Now, that's a fabulous question. Because once you've decided what you want your magic to be, then you can delve into the art. You can read, as Mark said. It's reading. So apart from the obvious Corinda's 13 Steps to Mentalism, which is a great book, I mean, you know, let's not knock it. Okay, great book. What other books would you recommend, Mark, that people should look at and delve into?
Well, we're very lucky nowadays, because we live in a day and age where there is a tremendous outpouring of creativity from magicians and mentalists, and because communication has got so much easier, you know, it's very easy for someone to put an ebook together, you know, a PDF, or to do a video and post it online. You know, it's very quick and easy for anyone to do. Now, unfortunately, that means there's a lot of material in amongst that maybe is not great material, but in amongst it, there are some fabulous gems. I mean, certainly the modern guys, I mean, people like Peter Turner, really, Pete came from a place of, propless mentalism, trying to see how far you can push the mentalism literally with no props, no billets, no pieces of paper, nothing.
Right.
And it's interesting, Pete pushed it as far as he could, and he got it to a place which was amazing. But now, as he's grown as a performer, he's come back to those sort of classic methods. And his creativity is brilliant when he applies them to those classic methods. So I would, certainly recommend stuff that Pete's coming up with. But to be honest, nowadays we also live in a time where people want the latest download. They want, they consume magic like they consume food. It's like you literally watch something, you throw away the wrapper, and you move on to the next course. It's like that with mentalism. And actually, if you stop and you go back to some of those earlier texts, if you go back to Animan, if you go back to the Jinx, there are some phenomenal tricks in there. I mean, look, just this week, I saw an advert come out from Penguin Magic. It was a Doc Hilford download for a brand new, I think actually he's released the trick before. It's a trick he's calling Junkie. The actual core method of it is from a Jinx effect. It's a Jinx effect by Henry Christ. And it's been around, it's been in print. And it was one of those lost gems. It was sort of hidden away, and Doc has rejuvenated and put it back out there. And to be honest, it's fantastic. It's a great piece of, mentalism, very clean. It's a sort of thought of card effect, but the method is in Jinx. The exact method is there. So if you've got that knowledge of the Jinx and some of those early works, and studying billet technique, you can do anything. You really can. I mean, Bob Cassidy said that billets is the cornerstone of mentalism. He's absolutely right. I 100% agree with that statement, because the reality is, with some folded pieces of paper and some pencils, you can actually create any of the plots in mentalism, any of the effects and routines that you think about in mentalism, you could actually recreate it with a little bit of thinking and restructuring, just using billets, just using pieces of paper. So you can achieve so much with just very little props as well.
Well, a great example of that, and he was kind enough to comp me and some other friends at the show in Vegas, and that's Jerry McCambridge. Just stuff with billets. And for those who don't know, go look it up. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently his father was an ex-law enforcement person, and that led to the TV series The Mentalist. I have no idea, but it's a nice story. If it's true, it's a nice story.
If you look at Jerry's act, I think the last 50 minutes, I think it's almost that long, is essentially just a billet act. It's a blindfold billet act. And yet that probably is the most impactful part of Jerry's show. I mean, it's all personal information. It's all really interactive with the audience. I mean, it's great. If you're ever in Vegas, definitely take the time to go and see Jerry. Absolutely.
And if you know the right people, it'll give you a comp ticket as well. Marc, we talked about that. We talked about the environment. We talked about what would you feel if someone said to you, look, I want to go out and get 3 books and really devote myself to mind magic, to mentalism. What 3 would you suggest?
Well, the classics, obviously, Animan's Practical Mental Effects, because that's the collection of the best mentalism routines from the Jinx. I would try and get a copy of the Jinx as well, because there's a lot of material that has been overlooked, that didn't appear in that book. So anything by Animan gets a massive sort of tick from me. He was a genius. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was ahead of his time. Very clean cut methods, very devious methods, sometimes very bold as well. And those methods, I would say almost every mentalist, every professional working mentalist is using something that Animan has created. There'll be elements of Animan in literally every single performer's act. And then obviously Corinda's 13 Steps to Mentalism, fine. It's sort of there because it's that encyclopedia. It gives you that sort of broad overview knowledge. And those are the sort of classic recommendations. But I would add to that as a third book, I would add David Berglass's Mind, Myth and Magic. So that's a more modern book. And the reason I would add that in is because of David's thinking. You know, it's not necessarily about the tricks in there. There are some fantastic tricks in there, of course. There are tricks that David has made his living from all his life in that book. But I think if you read between the lines, if you get into that material, you'll understand more about what David tried to achieve with his career and you know, successfully did achieve with his career. And that's the creating of a, you know, of a character, of a mystery man, of a, you know, of a legend in a way. And I think that is why I would recommend that book, because mentalism is so about the performer. So the first two books give you material, but the third book is really about, you know, the David Berglass Mind, Myth and Magic book is about developing that character and that mystique and creating that persona, that gravitas on stage, you know, and having that identity that makes you a true man of mystery.
I think T.A. Waters did something of a similar title, if my memory serves.
He did, yes. T.A. Waters had Mind, Myth and Magic as well. It's a fantastic book as well. If you gave me a fourth choice, I'd probably add that in. It's encyclopedic in knowledge. In fact, I have it. It's sitting on the floor by my desk just here. But it's literally that thick. And there's some things in it that you, as a performer, I look at them and go, that's just an idea. I don't think he ever performed that. I think it's just an idea. But then there are other things you can look, yeah, actually he performed that. You can tell, you know. So some are more honed than others. So again, it is a great book as well.
Indeed. David Berglass that Marc has just referred to, if you don't know who he is, I would strongly suggest you look it up. He's around 90-ish, I think, at the moment. He was recently awarded an OBE, which is, you know, quite a big deal from
it was actually an MBE.
An MBE. Oh, I beg your pardon.
Member of the British Empire.
I've been listing him as an OBE. I bring him up because as this is an SAM show, we have our publication called MUM, which stands for Magic, Unity and Might. Every month, the August issue, I'm reliably informed, will have the logo of the Magic Circle on the cover and be surrounded by 12 eminent people from different parts of the world who are members of the Magic Circle. And one of them is Mr. Berglass. There's no way we could write about him. I don't know him well enough to write about him, so I did an introduction. I approached somebody else, a mutual friend of ours, to write some words, who knew him fairly intimately and, you know, spent a lot of time with him, etc. So don't miss your issue of August MUM. I mean, it's going to be one of those you want to keep somewhere. Speaking of Mr. Berglass, I also mentioned in my various posts about you, Marc, that you are the only one, to the best of my knowledge, that performs ACAN, any card at any number, and you are the only person that Mr. Berglass has shared the secret with. Is that correct?
Well, it's nice of you to think that I'm that unique. It's not entirely true.
Okay.
I mean, I've spent a lot of time with David over the years. I mean, I was first introduced to him, I think, way back in 1988 when I started working for Marvin's Magic. And David, obviously as Marvin's son, was there at the opening of the stand that I was opening, which I think was in Harrods. It might have been Hamleys where I met him, but it was one of those two. And I was very lucky that David became president when I was in my 20s. So David was at the Magic Circle every week. He was always there. He was always immaculate. He was always in a suit and tie. You know, he really did look the part of the president of the Magic Circle. And he was a wonderful president, always accessible, which meant that I spent a lot of time with him and was able to, chat to him a lot. I also was very lucky that I discovered I only lived about 10 minutes from his house, 10 minutes in the car. So David retired at some point during that time. So I used to go and visit, and we used to just chat about magic and so on. So over the years, I've been very lucky to see him perform the burgless effect. It's not any card at any number. It is the burgless effect.
Exactly. I was hoping you would say that and correct it. Correct. Yes.
The burgless effect. I fell in love with that idea. Now, I was very lucky that I obviously got to see him perform many times. And David has written up his methods. Richard Kaufman spent literally, I think it's fair to say, years working with David, writing David's book, which is called The Burgless Effects, with an S on the end. And that book, though, was a very limited publication. Again, it's a very thick book, encyclopedic, and it's all of David's card magic. And part of that, a very big part of that, is the burgless effect. Now, for me, the burgless effect is the perfect definition of impossibility. I think a lot of magic sometimes lacks impossibility. And I hope people don't think that's an unfair thing to say, but there are certain routines that are more comedy orientated. There are routines that are more fun. They're about the audience participation. Sometimes the impact of a routine is not necessarily as I personally would wish for a routine. I'm looking for astonishment. I'm looking for something amazing. And sometimes some of the effects that I might read about, they don't tick that box for me. They're not astonishing. They're not impossible enough. And the burgless effect is the definition of impossibility for me. It's actually plausible impossibility as well. So obviously, it's a coincidence effect. That's what it is. Somebody calls out any card, somebody calls out any number, and when you count down to that number, that card is at that position. That's what it is. But what David, and of course, any card at any number, that effect is written up in like one paragraph in the back of the Encyclopedia of Card Magic by, Hugh Gordon Brow. I mean, it's just, it's just, there is sort of no method. We all sort of know what that is. But you see, what David added substantially to that was the levels of impossibility. The fact that this is any card, any number between 1 and 52, 3 choices, and a third person, not the performer, counts down to that number. The performer does not touch the cards. At least that's what it appears to be to the audience. And when the audience goes away and that criteria is in their head, that it was any card, any number, and no one touched the cards, it is impossible. It's a plausible impossibility because, well, maybe just by chance it was there, but it is a really unlikely event. For me, I think, let me give you another example. I remember watching, and this is a totally different genre of magic. I remember watching Robert Harbin perform the zigzag on the stage of the Palladium. Now, I wasn't there live because it was in the late 1960s, but I've seen a black and white clip of it, and I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. Harbin's presentation for the zigzag is the best presentation I have ever seen for that illusion. The first thing is, it's a patter effect. This is not something done with an illusion that is presented in front of the audience with the performer talking about what makes it impossible. I mean, he gets, his assistant gets put in the box. He brings up a woman from the audience. She checks that her face, that the assistant's face is real, the hands are real, that the feet are real, that the blades are real. The woman helps push the blades into the illusion. The woman helps push the midsection of the assistant to one side. And then at that point, Harbin shakes hands with the assistant through the space. And then again, the on-stage volunteer checks her face is real. He opens a panel. He she feels the assistant's stomach, and she can feel the assistant breathing, that her hands are real, that her feet are real. I mean, it's an utter impossibility. And the reason it works so brilliantly is Harbin essentially is telling the audience why it's impossible. He's emphasizing all the points. Anything that the audience might be thinking, you know, somebody in the audience might be thinking, well, maybe there's a mirror in that space, which makes me look like I'm looking through it, but it's, you know, I'm not really looking through it. So then by shaking hands with the lady assistant through that space, disproves that. And he steadily disproves every single method that the audience is thinking. So it becomes an utter impossibility. And the Burgos effect is like that as well. It's about impossibility.
Absolutely. Anyone who's seen it, just very, very quickly, you've jogged my memory on something, and it would be remiss of me not to add it. Situation, FISM 2000. Stan Allen is there with John Mooring, and they've got this table, lots of Magic magazines piled up. The July issue, because that's when FISM was, has a picture of John Rockerbomber. John Rockerbomber's face, if you can imagine, is there, and around his face was several random cards. That was the cover of Magic magazine at that time. Mr. Burglass comes up, shakes hands with everybody, says hello, and then says to somebody, do you happen to have a deck of cards? Because he was a very, how can I put it, the epitome of a gentleman. I think you will agree, Mark. Yes, very.
Yes, absolutely. And he loved borrowing decks of cards as well. You know, just borrow the card, get 4 or 5 decks up, you know.
And he sort of looked at it and turned to someone else and, would you please, I can't do it, but, you know, would you please shuffle those? And it's very elegant and very gentlemanly. It's the only way I can describe it, and they did. And he then took them back and then just proceeded to deal them onto the table. Not nonchalantly, not arrogantly, just very gently, you know, just graciously is the word I'm looking for. And they matched all the cards on the cover. If you know who John Rockerbomber is and what John doesn't know about playing cards, I can tell you, apart from John Mooring, well, he's gone now, Stan Allen and a few other people, and I happened to be standing there at the time, John Rockerbomber's face was literally, this is John Rockerbomber, you know, watching a card effect. So, which brings us neatly to, I believe you have a card effect in mind.
Oh, yes, I do.
Share with us.
Okay, I'll do it now. Yeah, all right. Listen, we live obviously in very strange times, and there is this sort of little, I'm always amazed by my fellow performers' ability to adapt to situations and their ingenuity at coming up with ways of being able to earn money. You know, and these Zoom shows that you see people doing, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. Now, I can't see myself ever performing a Zoom show, but the intellectual exercise of putting together a Zoom show, I think is fantastic. And I think, you know, if you're going to do it, your Zoom effects really are going to fit into 3 basic categories. They're going to be effects where you're performing something and your audience is responding. So for example, you're asking someone to name a number, and somebody on Zoom can obviously interact and name a number, for example. So there's those type of effects where the audience is going to be involved, but it's literally just verbally. The second type of effect is obviously just a visual effect, any visual magic. You know, Bill Palmer was here with cups and balls. You know, if you were doing cups and balls visually, you know, and the audience just watches it, literally passively watches it, and like any great visual magic. And then the third type of effect is the interactive types, you know, the effect where maybe the magic actually happens for them in their own home. And those are the sort of ones I think that fascinate me. As Anthony said earlier, I've been a massive fan of mathematics and mathematical principles, and, you know, I mean, you know, I love card tricks that sort of seem to be inexplicable, you know, but there's some sort of core method going on underneath. So this week, for the intellectual challenge, have created for you a interactive Zoom card trick. Okay, so you will need a deck of 52 playing cards.
Sorry to interrupt, Mark. Apologies, but I think it's fair to say this has never been done anywhere before.
No, this has never been performed anywhere. I've never performed this, and it's been created specifically for this event on this day, okay? And you'll see why in a moment. So
Oh,
hopefully you'll have a pack of 52 cards. Anthony, have you got a deck of 52 cards?
Absolutely. Yes.
You've got a deck of 52 cards, okay? Shuffle them up.
That's without the jokers, right?
That's without the jokers, yes. So
Jokers,
give
yeah.
them a good
Okay.
shuffle.
Yes. Any particular kind of shuffle or just a couple of
It
cuts?
really doesn't matter. Yeah, try not
just
to
a couple
drop them
of
on the floor. That's the
Right. Okay. Right.
You've got a deck of cards. You know,
That's it.
obviously,
I've got it.
I cannot know where any particular card is in your pack of 52. All right. So
Correct.
basically, think of a number. Think of a number. Let's say between 1 and 20. Think of a number between 1 and 20.
Okay.
Do not say what that number is. Just get it in your head. That's going
Okay.
to be your special number. And what I want you to do is to, first of all, deal off that number of cards onto the table. So if you were thinking of the number 7.
Sorry, Mark. Well, it's dreadful to interrupt in the way I've done, but you know, I'm kind of watching a little bit of the other people, and I think I ought to say this is not just for me. This is for
everyone can do this.
Everyone watching.
Everybody
Okay.
can do this. So
apologies.
if you've got a deck of cards, get a deck of cards now,
Right.
and you can do this. I'll do it on you now. So I'll do this on everybody who's watching. So anybody's nearby, I'll give you 10 seconds or so to get a deck of cards from somewhere nearby, and then we'll start doing the trick with you, whoever you might be, wherever.
Right.
Okay. So hopefully everyone's got one. So 52 cards, no jokers. You're thinking of a number between 1 and 20. And what I want you to do is to deal that number of cards into a pile on the table. So if you were thinking, for example, of the number 7, you would deal 7 cards into a pile on the table. But keep that number to yourself, keep your dealing silent, and just do that. So when you've got that number, leave them in a pile. And what I want you to do now is to deal a second pile of that number of cards. So if you were thinking of 7, you'd deal a second pile of 7. So do a second pile with the same number in it. I'll give you just a couple of seconds to do that. So all of you now should have 2 packets of cards on the table and this packet left in your hand. Now,
sorry, Mark, to interrupt. The 2 piles on the table, the second pile, I just want to get this right. The second pile goes on top of the first pile. Is that correct?
No, 2 separate piles.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. 2 separate piles. So if you're thinking of 7, 2 separate piles of 7. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, this is the important point. You now have a deck of cards that is not 52 cards. You have a deck of cards that I could not know how many cards are in it. True?
True.
And ask yourself that question. That is a true statement because you're thinking of a random number between 1 and 20. You've dealt 2 piles of that number onto the table, and you're left with a number of cards that I could not possibly know.
Correct.
Bear that in mind as we go through this. You might well think that this is some sort of mathematical trick, but remember, I do not know how many cards you have here. All right. So the important thing is give these cards a little shuffle, a little mix. And when you're happy with that, I want you to look at and remember the top card. All right. The top card of the packet in your hand. All right. Say it to yourself in your head 3 times. Do not forget it. Say it to yourself in your head 3 times. Okay, remember that card. Now pick up one of your 2 piles that you have on the table, one of your 2 piles, just one of them, and pick them up, pick one pile up and put it on top of your chosen card.
Any pile?
Any pile, just one of those piles, put it on top.
Right.
Okay. So when you've done that, we're now going to make this unique to this event. Anthony asked me very kindly to be part of it. He's hosting this event. Anthony's full name is Anthony Darkstone Brooke. And that's what we're going to use to mix the cards up in a special way. I want you, for every letter of Anthony's name, to take a card from the top. Don't do it just yet. You're going to take a card from the top and you're going to put it underneath for every letter of Anthony's name. And so that you know, that is how you are spelling Anthony Darkstone Brooke. So just go through each letter.
So tell us when should we start now?
Yeah, you can start now. So start.
Okay.
Take a card from the top and put it on the bottom. Take another card from the top, put it on the bottom for each letter as you go through.
O-N-Y.
If we wait for Anthony, I'm sure the rest of you will do.
D-A-R-K-S-T-O-N-E, and finally B-R-O-O and K. That's
Perfect.
Yep.
Remind yourself in your head the card you're thinking of. Just remind yourself. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to find all of your cards. Today is the 6th of June, 2020. All right. That's the day that Anthony chose to put this out. So Anthony chose this event to happen on this day.
Correct.
So that packet of cards that you have in your hand, I want you to deal 6 cards onto the table for the 6th day of June. So deal 6 onto the table. When you've done that, deal on top of it 6 more cards for June, 6 months.
Done.
And we live in obviously 2020, and I want you to deal 20 more cards onto that pile on the table.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Done it.
Put your finger on that 20th card. The last card you dealt, put your finger on top of it.
Got it.
Make a wish, and if your wish is going to come true, the card under your finger, that top card, should be the card you're thinking of.
What the? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Oh, man, I'll tell you.
Let us know if it worked for you, okay?
Yeah, it worked for me. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Yeah, it worked for me. They're all. I'm getting tons of thumbs up. Whoa!
It worked.
Whoa.
I've got people saying it worked. Yes.
Yes. Tons of them. Yes, I have a request to make, Mr. Paul. Yes, can I be a priest in your new religion? I'll collect all the money from the temple. Yes, I will. Wow. Aren't you glad you came? You can go and tell everybody what happened. And here's the sad part.
He doesn't like me anymore.
You can tell people what happened to you.
So many people have done it. I'm so thrilled that so many people did it.
Wow. That's just like, yeah, you can go and tell people what you did, and they're going to go, nah, it never happened.
So the important thing to remember, is you started with a deck of cards that I did not know the number of cards in it. That's the key to making this seem impossible. Remember, I was talking about sort of making things, emphasizing impossibility and building up impossibility. For this, we all know it's a mathematical card trick. But if your audience believes the truth you're stating, and it is a truth,
yes,
there's a deck of cards, and I can't know the number on that. That makes this much more inexplicable. It becomes much more impossible to rework. So there you go. My gift to you all. You can all figure that out.
Thank you so much. And as the old saying in showbiz goes, follow that. The short answer is I can't. So let's throw the floor open. We have some time left, so let's throw the floor wide open. If you want to ask Marc a question or say something directly to him, turn on your mic and just ask Marc directly. But
or just say hello. I know there's people like Bob Hamilton, and Keith Churcher, and people like that. If you want to just say hello, I'd love to see you as well.
Yeah, there's a young man that you know very well, who won the John Hart Trophy. We spoke about that before. And
we had a chat with Charles.
Yeah, I know we did. Yeah, well, Charles, it's my son, and what he's done is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Marc, I don't like you anymore. Marc Williams, oh, bless his heart, dear Marc from Vegas. He's our wonderful buddy and friend who helps us with all the editing and everything else. And he's a great magician himself. You probably never heard of him. He doesn't care about that. People like Lance Burton and Max Maven and all the big names, they know him. So anyway, Marc is just put one single word, and that is sweet. Okay. Wow.
Thank you, Marc.
Yeah, let's see. Well, glad you're nice to Marc because he's going to edit this, Paul. No, he does a good job. He edits not just as an editor, but as a magician as well. So, okay. Yeah, Paul says, thank you very much. I have to go. It's Paul Crutelli, who used to be our
Bye, Paul.
contest chairman at all the past SAM conventions, stage and close-up. And I was very honored, along with John Rockobama, Scott Wells, and other eminent people, to judge once the stage and once the close-up. What does he say? Oh, the effect was impossible and wonderful and a great gift. This is from Paul Crutelli indeed. That was awesome. Yes, it worked. Yeah, I'm getting tons of stuff just shooting up here. So feel free anytime to just unmute your mic and ask Mark.
I have a question.
I have a question for Mark.
Oh, hold on. I have to give preference to Dr. Joel, not because he's the SAM president, but because he's the guy who's got his button on Zoom. He can switch us off in a heartbeat. Go ahead, Joel, please.
Oh, no, I didn't have a question. That was somebody else was asking it. So, well, happily unmute your mic.
That's cool. I can wait.
No, you definitely can
Likewise.
wait. Yeah. No, you definitely can wait. Let Joel go. Well, yeah. Those who know who he is will understand why I said that to him. Yeah, that's my son. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, Joel. Yes.
Oh no, I didn't have a question there too.
I did actually.
Oh,
it was somebody else.
Oh, it was somebody else. Okay.
But also your son did. I mean, I don't want to cut him off as well.
No, okay. Who else? No,
actually, I just, you know what, you mentioned your AAA book test in if I remember correctly, it was your Penguin Live lecture, or it was in the Alakazam lecture. I don't remember which one it was now, but I've been kind of been following you ever since I learned about you, and I even sent a friend request now that I know you're on Facebook, because I am that impressed with you, and I really appreciate you sharing your magic with us. But you never did go through how to do your AAA book test. Please, if it's possible, can you explain that? Or maybe I didn't see the right lecture that had you explain it, but you mentioned it.
It has been explained in a number of places now. I won't explain it here because I'm not sure potentially how public this could be. You know, I know it's going to go on the Magic Circle website and so on, but
best to leave the explanation perhaps in a one-on-one with Keith. Yeah.
Good question. I tell you where you can get it though. Originally, I wrote it up in a set of lecture notes, but that's going way back to the early 2000s. So forget that. It appeared in 2015 in my Penguin Live lecture, not my Penguin Live Act. That's a later Penguin download. What you want is the one from 2015, which is my Penguin Live lecture. And the AAA book test is fully explained in there. But just recently, I did a project with Peter Turner for Illusionist. And if you go to Illusionist and you type in AAA book test, there is a download that is just the AAA book test. And obviously the full handling is explained in there, but what is brilliant in there are Pete Turner's additions to the AAA book test, because when I did the AAA book test, when I originally was performing it, it was the first word on the page. So the spectator was looking at the first word on the page and you could read their mind. Pete has changed that. So it appears that the spectator is thinking of any word on the page. And there's also a great Mark Spellman subtlety that I've also been using over the years, where it really is genuinely any word on the page. One is the first word on the page, and actually they can then think of any word. So it doesn't even have to be in a book. So, which is a great Spellman subtlety. And that's on the Illusionist download of the AAA book test. And that only came out a few weeks ago. So those are sort of two main places. Now, I probably mentioned it in my Alakazam course, the Axe course, but it's because it's been out there for so many years, I may not have explained it on there. I'm trying to remember. There was over 9 hours of material on those on those videos, so I can't remember exactly whether I performed it or not. I may not have. I think I did maybe my latest version of it, which is a coincidence effect. So the spectator thinks of a word, and then I think of a word, and then we say the words at the same time, and it's a coincidence effect. We both have the same word, so it's like a verbal reveal rather than doing a written reveal. But those are the places you can get it. Your choice, really. Have a look around. But it is quite well known as well. It's been out there a few years now.
Well, glad
Okay,
to
I
see you.
have the live. I watched the live online, the live act. But
Yeah,
I didn't,
the live act.
Yeah.
It's not in the live act. The live act is just it is a full act of mentalism, put together and structured for a corporate or a cruise ship audience. So the AAA book test is not in that. The AAA book test is really, it's not something maybe you would put in a formal show, because its power is in its impromptu nature. It is any book, any time, any place. So somebody hands you a book that you've never seen before, you can do a book test with them with the knowledge of the AAA book test. So its power is in its immediacy, being able to do it there and then. Because there are great book tests out there, like obviously Mother of All book tests and things like that are better as stage effects. But if you want an impromptu book test, then the AAA it's a good one. It does work very well.
Well, it's good to see you here, Keith, because you're welcome. Keith
Thanks,
is from
Keith. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, Keith is from Canada and a member of our SAM International Assembly. And we have some wonderful people who are in that assembly, including the editor of MUM as well, would you believe? Yes, and we actually have some members from that assembly here with us. So if there's anybody from the Magic Circle who's interested, get in touch with me and I'll explain it to you. And you can be a member of the SAM and all the benefits that brings, not just the International Assembly. And the links between the two organizations, not just today, but have been for decades. At every SAM convention, if I remember rightly, it was Chris Pratt and then somebody else who would have Michael Bailey. They would have a cocktail reception at the SAM, and just, the Magic Circle hosts. So there's a lot, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a special issue in August as well, devoted to many notables. We couldn't put all the notables in, but many of them, some great names. So look out for that one. Any more questions or?
Yeah, I have a question for Mark.
Hello. Sure.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Is Matt Groudon in Huntsville, Alabama. And you have
nice to see you. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, you had talked about earlier some situations where you may not be able to perform mentalism, so you might do a lightning calculation or mnemonic situation. But do you have some close-up mentalism effects that you do keep on you to use in an impromptu situation so that you're prepared to perform something? So
do you know what? I actually don't. What normally happens is I'll be in a cruise ship environment. So before I perform, I'm a nobody. Nobody knows who I am. But when I've been out on stage, everybody on the ship knows who I am. So I will, if I'm wandering around the ship, you might have somebody that sort of challenges you to read their mind, and that might happen quite a lot, as you're walking around the ship. So if I did stop and do something for everyone, I'd be there all day. I also think the slight problem is my stage act is very structured, and it has a very high level of impossibility. That stage show, when you watch it, I want the audience to go away utterly amazed by it. And my personal feeling is some of the close-up mental effects that I know and that I do perform maybe don't match up to that level of impossibility. So it's hard, at the end of my show, I'm revealing people's, their birthdays and their telephone numbers and their mother's maiden names. And, I used to do national insurance number and social security numbers and things like that. And all of that is so, personal, that if any sort of impromptu mentalism is a little tricky. I tell you what I used to do. All right. So I now have, what I actually have now are engaging pieces of conversation. I have pieces of conversation where I can say, well, I can't read your mind at this exact moment because the conditions aren't right, which is absolutely true. And I then will give them a little piece of knowledge about the mind or about memory or about rapid calculation, some interesting conversation starters, something that they can take away with them, something that they can learn at that moment. So, for example, I might quickly teach them how to multiply a 2-digit number by 11 or something like that. Something that's quite specific, or squaring a number ending in 5 or something like that. So these are sort of rapid calculation stunts that I don't feel they're really used nowadays, but it gives them a little in to what, to our, our world, as it were. It's sort of letting them into our world and shows them that these things, with the right knowledge and the right application of skill, you can do these things too. And my favorite demonstrations is a quick little memory demonstration or something like that. So that's what I will lean towards rather than an effect as such. What I used to do though, is I did used to carry around with me a little, and I put this in some lecture notes like years ago. I had in my jacket, I had a couple of wallets. The idea was that there was a little index in both the wallets. One was for light-haired people and one was for dark-haired people. So I would have a billet for a woman with light hair, a woman with dark hair, a man with light hair, a man with dark hair, a man with dark hair and glasses, a bald man, things like that. And the statement would go, so somebody comes up to me and says, "Can you read my mind?" I would stop them and I would go, "Do you know what? I knew you were going to ask me that. In fact, look, before I left my cabinet, I wrote it down. And on the paper it says, a bald man will stop me and ask me to read his mind." So, and that's perfect. I've just done it. There you go. But it was a bit, sometimes you're on these cruise ships and you're in baking hot weather. So actually carrying around like a couple of indexes was actually, not very practical, but it's a great thing to do, just the most likely variations of people. And if it was somebody who was really unusual, then I just wouldn't do that effect. But if it was one of my 6 or 7 outs, then, I could, reveal that person was going to stop me and ask me to read their mind. So there's a free effect for you, as it were.
Now, Mr. Stark, you've asked if you can unmute your mic and ask a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you after far too many years.
Thank you, Charles. Good to see you as well. Well done.
I was actually sort of loop a little bit back to what you said earlier, because I found that very, very interesting, more so than obviously the effects and everything, and all that you mentioned about mentalism. You mentioned there is a difference between a mentalist and a mind reader. Looping back to that, my question to you is there that much of a difference, or would you say that nowadays they sort of connect in a way? And how much of a difference is, in your case as a performer, how much of a difference is there between the two or not?
I think for the general public, there is no distinction. I mean, nowadays, obviously, in America, the word mentalist is very clear. You had the NBC show, The Mentalist, and, that I think has put that word out there. You also had Jeremy Cambridge's show. I think it's become much more common. I use the definition really in terms of our culture. I have always described myself as a mind reader, and my #1 show on a cruise ship is just that. It is mind reading effects. There's no prediction effects or influencing effects or anything else like that. It's just mind reading. And for a British audience, calling yourself a mind reader is, a more immediate term. It's a more it's a more obvious term to use. When I mentioned it earlier, what I meant was a mentalist. If you call yourself a mentalist, I think you're going to be adding rapid calculation stunts and memory stunts and influencing effects and predictions and even metal bending, and all of those effects come into it if you call yourself a mentalist. If you call yourself a mind reader, Marc Paul mind reader, I think it would be very hard for me to walk out on stage and bend a spoon. That, to me, that's not what a mind reader does. So it's really an internal definition of what I do personally, rather than applying it to the whole sort of world of mentalism. So I think I've toyed with the idea of putting an act together and calling myself a mental juggler and doing a sort of number act or rapid calculation or memory or whatever, because I think it can come across like that to an audience. If it's high speed and it's fast and you're doing stuff in your head, calculations and remembering things and stuff like that, I think that could be quite a fun way of doing it. But yeah, for terms of definitions, really, I'm just talking about a mind reader being somebody who reads minds. I think that's a clearer definition, and that's what you should deliver if that's what you're calling yourself.
Cool, thank you.
Gentlemen, you're welcome, Mr. Stark. There's a gentleman here called Stu, S-T-U. I have a couple of questions also, so please would you unmute your mic and ask them.
Hello, Stu. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, fine. I have two questions. One about your act. Do you try to convince people that you really are reading minds, or do you just claim in some way so they know it's an act? And
great. Yeah, great question. I think that's a personal choice that you have to make as a performer. How far are you going to sort of take this? There is no doubt in my mind that when I'm performing on stage, in my audience, there will be people that are believing in what I do. And there will also be people that are not believing in what I do. My job really is not to change anyone's opinion. I would say my job is obviously primarily to astonish, entertain, engage that audience. And at the end of it, if you believed in this stuff, you should still believe in this stuff. And if you didn't, you should still not believe in it. I think that's my own sort of personal view on it. So I don't overtly make claims. I don't overtly go too heavy with it. I recently watched Luke Jamay. Last year I watched Luke Jamay performing his show, and Luke is very much, it feels like a psychic show. It very much feels like a psychic show. And when you look around the audience, the people that are going there are people that would go to a psychic show. They're not the people that would go to see a magician. They're going to see something that they believe in. My audiences are much more general. They are corporate audiences. So you certainly can't sell the heavy mentalism to a corporate audience. And same with a cruise ship audience. A cruise ship audience, it's entertainment, it's just fun, it's light-hearted. So yes, I want the astonishment and the amazement, but I don't want it to be too heavy.
The other question I had, if you can just give us a good idea of where we can purchase your material, or what you feel is the best of your material.
Yeah, if you go to, I think there are two places. If you go to Penguin Magic, and if you just type in Marc Paul, Marc with a C, M-A-R-C, Paul, there are two downloads that you'll see there, which is my Penguin live lecture, which is about 4 hours of material. And there's a mixture of material. There is some close-up mentalism, there's stage mentalism, there's impromptu stuff, there's corporate stuff, a whole range, stuff with cards, stuff without cards. If you're into close-up mentalism, the most practical thing there, I would say, is the AAA phone mystery, which is an anytime, any place piece of mentalism, and it just uses a couple of business cards and pencils. It resets from table to table, and just carrying a stack of business cards and some pencils in your pocket, you can do some really strong mind reading. And it's based on Annemann's telephone drama. It's a reworking of Annemann's telephone drama. And the problem with Annemann's telephone drama is you had to remember a telephone number at one point. And if you're just looking at some information and you have to remember an 11-digit number, that's going to be quite tough. So with my method, you can still do that. The information is delivered to you. You're aware of that information. You don't have to remember anything. It just happens automatically. So if you're into close-up stuff, that's a good resource. There's also my Penguin Live Act, which is a full act. It's a full 45-minute act, and I talk about the structure and why I put it together in that order. But that is a stand-up set that could be used, say, in a corporate environment. And then the final resource, if you go to Alakazam Magic, which is alakazammagic.co.uk, and again you type in Marc Paul, there's a couple of things that will come up. The main thing there is a downloadable DVD, downloadable video, which is a course in mentalism, of my mentalism, and it's almost 9 hours long. So it was filmed over 2 days, and it's 9 hours of my material. Talking about billet effects, talking about the corporate world, trade shows, and loads of effects for all of those markets. So that's an overview. So thank you for your interest.
Yeah, Bob Hanlon, our colleague at the Magic Circle, has actually mentioned that. Yeah, he's mentioned that about Alakazam and the DVD, but he also says, I have a question for Marc too. So Bob, whenever you're ready, go ahead, please.
I think you may have already answered this, Marc. Hi. You're not a big fan of people doing mentalism if they're booked in a table hopping environment. Is that correct?
Well, yes, for me personally, that is correct. For me personally, I have never felt that mentalism in that environment gets the impact that it gets on stage. You can't match the impact of a mentalism act on stage with a 7-minute to 10-minute set at a table when it's noisy, people are distracted, you're getting interrupted by the Toastmaster, where there's so many things going on. Of course you can perform mentalism in that environment. Of course you can. And I'm sure that you can get good reactions within that environment. I just feel I've maybe been a bit spoiled, because once you've been on stage and once you're standing in front of an audience and you have their full attention, and you can take them on that journey with you for the next 45, 50 minutes or even an hour, you achieve so much more than you can just at that short spot at a table in a noisy, distracting environment. That's all. That's my main point with it. Of course, do mentalism in that environment. There are some potential potholes as well. I did find that when I was doing sort of table hopping mentalism, things like billets, and people writing on them, sometimes in dim lights and that environment, you simply can't read it. It's just not, the environment isn't right. Once again, we come back to environment. It's about looking at that environment and thinking, well, what material works best for this scenario? And I would look at it and think, well, no, billets are out, this is out. So, and even doing something like a book test, say the AAA book test, in that environment, you've got the problem the other way. The spectator might not be able to read the word on the page, and therefore they might read it. And
here we just had a little bit of a jam.
Me personally,
he's back. Okay,
was not working.
Yeah, I think I would definitely go along with that, because I think my genre of magic and the character that I use. It's one of those strange things when you're doing, for want of a better word, magic of the mind, or one of a better phrase, to be able to create that fourth wall on the stage, to lend that impossibility that Marc was saying. I feel, as Marc does, and indeed several other people and my mentors, one of whom was dear Pat Page, some of you older guys will know who he is, that if you're doing that at a table, however fun it might be to reveal the name of their dog or cat or parrot, that fourth wall element of impossibility is not there. That's kind of my take on it.
You've exactly hit the point there. I think it's all about impossibility. On stage, you can build that impossibility. You can make the audience understand why this is so impossible. And the trouble in a table hopping environment is it's just too many distractions. You need people to focus. You need them to focus on the points that you're making. Mentalism is about subtlety. And sometimes in a close-up environment, subtlety goes out the window. You want to resort to your visual, impactful, flashy effects. I've turned up and thinking I would do mentalism, and then ended up doing, cut and restored rope and ring flash and things like that, because that is the material that is better for the environment.
You spoke earlier on, and quite rightly so, about Bob Harbin, and of course, you know, he invented the zigzag, etc. And some of the older guys like me, and know that, if you can imagine, in some ways, was his patter and the subtlety of bringing up somebody from the audience to poke at the belly button, and just to that point where people go, "Oh yeah, maybe it's a mirror." He goes, "Here you go, shake my hand."
Yeah.
How do you transfer that feeling to a table? I don't know the answer to that, and if that is actually possible to do, I don't think it is.
I think for me, the solution is very strong visual, quick magic. You know, in London, there's a magician, probably that, you know, many of you guys haven't heard of, and that's Zap. I mean, Magic Circle members will have heard of him, but Zap keeps himself to himself, but he's probably one of the busiest professional magicians in London. And Zap is all, it says it in the name. I mean, Zap is all about flashy magic. It's visual, strong, flashy material. And that really works at tables. And the reality is, getting people to write something down on a folded slip of paper is not as interesting as their ring appearing on a chain in a big, massive flash. You know, that's the reality. So that's how I think you get the impossibility across. It's the spectacle of it. It's the visual nature of it.
The good thing about doing something, as you say, Mark, you know, a ring appearing on a string or something else happening, very zappy, is that 2 or 3 tables around you can actually watch it at the same time. So you're not having to go there and repeat it, you know, over and over. So you're getting some ways a kind of larger audience. I mean, I mentioned that point in a few years ago at my lecture at the Circle, that, you know, if you're doing that, try to capture. It's not a question of let me go and do 4,325 effects at 20 tables. Yep. It's if you can get the concentration of 3 or 4 tables and do something, standing away from them, so you're not touching their wine glass, you're not imposing on their personal space or their eating area, and you're still going to get paid the same check and go home. So, I mean, that's just a kind of personal view, which I'm glad that Mark is, you know, that was taught to me years and years and years and years ago, respect and RIP to him, by a good friend and mentor, Pat Page. Some of you will remember the time when he was at Davenport's, when it was opposite the British Museum in Great Russell Street. Now, there was a man who could do both. You could walk up to a table and, you know, just incredible.
You reminded me there, when you're talking about Pat Page and, you know, people like Ali Bongo. Ali Bongo always said good magic is about surprise. So I think that applies to this situation. If you can surprise your audience, that's how you can engage them at a table or from the stage as well. Sadly, a lot of mentalism lacks the element of surprise. You know, you actually want to build that in if you can, and have something that does surprise them at points, you know. And that's why a lot of mentalists now use things like cryptex, where something is written and it appears to be a word, and when you turn it upside down it becomes the number or whatever. So that's a surprise. The audience don't see that coming. And when you talk about Pat Page, Pat also agreed with that. Pat Page's chop cut routine was the most stripped down chop cut routine I've ever seen in my life. First of all, he used to perform it on a saucer on someone's hand. So he would put the saucer on someone's hand, which elevates it, but it also makes it more personal. It becomes almost like the sponge balls because it's happening in their hand. But literally, Pat Page's routine was, here's a ball and a cup. You know, I put the ball in my pocket. Where's the ball? In your pocket? No, it's under the cup. Okay, ball in the cup. Where's the ball? In your pocket under the cup. No, there's a lemon there. It was literally boom. That was it. One appearance, one routine with the ball, and straight to the lemon, because the lemon was the surprise, and then of course the immediate follow up with the second piece of fruit afterwards. It was literally bam bam. You know, and so Pat was a great advocate of surprise as well.
Yeah, surprise, impossibility, as Ali says as well. I mean, I was very, very privileged and blessed to perform with him not once but twice in Scotland, with Ali as well on the bill. And, you know, I literally was standing in the wings watching him do this. And then he went out to 2 people, picked up a saucer and did exactly what Mark says. It had everything, surprise element, intimacy, but at the same time, I am the magic. It was all of those things. If you've never read any of his work, I urge you to get it. It really is. I could tell you stories about him from now till Christmas, or maybe even next Christmas. But all of us who know him knew him and loved him. Speaking of him and Dear Ali, very shortly on the Darkstone Dossiers, which will probably be nearer to July, the second week of July. I'm going to have a wonderful gentleman that some of you from the Magic Circle will know. His name is Steve Short. He's written books on Ali, Johnny Hart, and David Nixon. So I want to bring this kind of British magic to all my compeers in the States and show them the legends that these people were, and have it down on tape. So we've got them in the SAM archives. You said, well, who's David Nixon, who's Johnny Hart, and who's well, Ali Bongo, pretty much everybody knew. But these are the people that we're going to be talking about, and the structure of the shows and TVs. But anyway, I'll put up posts and send you information, as will Joel, in good time. That'll probably happen, sometime in July, because we have on the 27th, we have another show coming up, and I'd love you all to come and join, and that's called the SAM International Stars of Magic, and that will feature members from SAM International Assembly, and the International Assembly really is international, from Morocco, Holland, I'm trying to remember, Norway, Malaysia, I mean, there's different parts. So we're putting that together, and it's a free show. So just look out for the posts, and obviously we would love to invite all our friends and fellow members, of course, from the Magic Circle to attend those. Okay, I think we've got, as I suspected this would happen, this was no way this was going to be a 45-50-minute show. Right, and thank God for that. I've loved it.
How long have we been here?
Yeah, almost an hour and 40 minutes. Seriously, yeah. Well, I mean, we could go on forever, and really, I think what I'm going to have to do is to arrange a time and bring back Marc again, and just focus on certain aspects that we've touched on today. So all I will say is please go to Alakazam, go to, as Marc says, Penguin, put his name in, obviously go to his site, marcpaul.com, and that's Marc with a C, M-A-R-C, .com. He said to me, no, I'm not really interested in plugging anything or whatever. Well, all right, I'll do it. Go to his website, look at it. We've given you the clue already. So we've referred to that, the answer several times. So just put in the answer and have a look and access some of Marc's stuff. And if you're very, very, very nice and you make a request to him on Facebook, he may even say yes. Yes. So yeah, if you send him $100 bill or a £50 note, he definitely will. 10% for the agent, 10%. I'm kidding. Look, we've come to that time. I don't know about the rest of you guys and gals that were here. I've loved it, but I'm biased. I'm biased. What can I say? I've told you. I've said it publicly. This is the one guy that makes me feel like a layperson. Seriously, right? And I love it. I love it. I'm biased, and just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Dr. Joel Zaritsky, who will be in July our new SAM president, because he does all the things about Zoom and links and everything else. And of course, to everybody for attending. And I think you will all want to join me with or without your mics. I don't mind. Switch your mics on, and let's give my good friend and wonderful, wonderful human being and a great performer a wonderful round of applause. To Marc Paul.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. It's very kind of you to come and watch. And all stay safe. And thanks again. Thanks, Anthony, for having me as well.
My honor and pleasure. And just as soon as we have the footage edited and put up and so on, I'll get the links out, and we will put them on the SAM pages, the Magic Circle pages, etc. Okay, so if you want to watch them again, they're there for you. So thank you all for attending. I wish you a pleasant rest of the weekend and a great week. Thank you so much.